All right. Well, I want to first start off by welcoming everyone to today's roundtable discussion. Today we're honoring Father's Day. My name is Hirancham Goshen, and I serve as the CEO for Dialysis Patient Citizens. And I'm truly grateful that for today's discussion, we have some amazing board members who've joined to also share a little bit about their journey and to kind of reflect on the topic as well. And I'll be honest, when I was asked to moderate this discussion, I was a little reluctant because, men were supposed to be tough. We're supposed to take care of everything, but you know what? We're also human. And, the more as it got closer to this discussion, I started to get more excited. And at the same time, I know it's not easy being vulnerable, but I, want to thank our board members, Hassan Arthur Hill, Christopher Richards, Adam Goldstein, all who volunteered to participate in this discussion and share their experiences as well. And so the one thing I do want to point out is, everyone has a different journey. But I think kidney disease has really united everyone in our organization. And so I'd like to just, call on folks individually to just share a little bit about their journey and fatherhood, family, what it's kind of meant. And I'm going to start with Hassan, if that's okay. Remember, Hassan, we were talking a few weeks ago, and you had mentioned that when you went into kidney failure, your, kids were younger, and that you really wanted them to have a normal childhood. And if you could talk a little about what that was like, that would be great.
Okay. Well, yeah, as Haran said, I was diagnosed with kidney failure at about 35 years old. So I was a young father, had four sons, and so with an array of ages. And so for me, with them playing sports and the outside curricular activities and everything that it requires a father and parents to do in general. And I was on dialysis also 3 days a week, but at the same time, I was taking my mother to dialysis. So I went to dialysis Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I had to take her to dialysis Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So having that schedule seemed like I never was able to get away from dialysis. But as a father, I had to try to prioritize and really look at making sure my kids had a normal life where my health wasn't a factor. So yeah, there was days where I would be tired from dialysis, but the goal was to make sure they got to all their sporting events, make sure they got to all their outside activities and whatnot. And so for me, it was about really I guess persevering through all that time, energy, and effort of dialysis and what it does to you, and really just saying, okay, I have all the way from now my kids are almost grown. Now I have one that's grown 26. I have one that's 20, one that's 18 and 13, that's 14 now. And so now it's I've had my transplant for 8 years now. And so for me, this past 8 years to give me the opportunity to really dive in through one's going to college and being able to be at graduations and not have to worry about um, uh, figuring out dialysis, but also being able to travel with my kids as they play their sports and do family vacations and whatnot without having to worry about dialysis. And so um, for me, it was a journey. It would have been different if I just had to worry about myself. I would have been able to not feel as overwhelmed. But I think that also being able to be there for my kids helped me keep going. And so I think that's what kept me going, knowing that, okay, I still got to be able to run around with them. I still got to be able to take them where they need to go. And I think that was what kept me going and kept me active and kept me energetic was, okay, finish dialysis, get a couple hours sleep, and then my real day starts. And um, so for me, it was a journey. Feel so blessed to have made it through it. And still, now just, when I look back, it's something that I've went through that, not too many people could even understand unless you've been there. And if you've been there, you understand that, what all it takes on you physically, but more than physically, mentally, because when you're on that dialysis chair, you don't think you're ever going to get a transplant. And then after the years keep going by, you just feel like, okay, am I going to be sitting here forever? And sometimes you feel like that. And sometimes, hope gets down, but then again, for me, it was my kids and my family that kept me going to say, okay, I'm going to get a transplant. It's going to happen. And so, so yeah, so for me, just being a part of, DPC and being able to um, share my story and advocate for those that are on dialysis and those that are, even those that are receiving transplants, and those that don't even know they're getting ready to go on dialysis is what excites me and drives me still. So that's what continues to drive me now that I'm on the other side from dialysis.
Thanks for sharing, Hassan. I mean, I know, like, my one son, motivates me and inspires me. And so having four while
Mhm.
trying to juggle dialysis and help your mom, I really appreciate your sharing. And,
Yes, thank you.
so Arthur, I know is a little bit different in your situation. Arthur, you were a little older and when you crashed into dialysis, and so you had kids who were older. And so I wanted to ask, like, how did that change the dynamic with your kids? And were they able to help more or get more involved, and engaged in your kidney disease journey?
Well, my twin daughters, they were probably about 27 when this happened. So, they were a little bit older to deal with it. And so far, so much. Uh, Jennifer lived in Washington, D.C. When I called from the ER and told her about it, she was ready to come home right then. And I said, no, wait a minute. And then I called Jessica. She lives up in Maine. She's a nurse, by the way. And I told her definitely don't come because she would have probably crashed the car before she got out the driveway heading down here. But I I found out that I had dialysis. It was just all of a sudden. I thought I was getting the flu, so I jumped on the plane and flew down to Jackson, Mississippi. Looked at a couple pieces of property for a client, and I was there 2 days, I think. And when I was leaving, I got up the next morning at the hotel. I don't remember leaving the hotel. I don't remember going to the airport. I
Hmm.
don't remember flying and stopping in St. Louis. I just came to driving down Highway 37 towards Bedford. It was all in a blackout. Come to find out, I had good pasture. It's a rare autoimmune disease that attacks either your kidneys or your lungs. And with me, it just attacked the kidneys and completely killed them off, and then went in remission. And that's it. That just goes away. But that leaves your kidneys completely dead. Um, so that was 16 years ago that
Hmm.
I was doing that. And the rest is history. I'm just doing it now.
Well, no, I mean, I think appreciate you sharing that because I think I've always heard that your kids are always your kids no matter what. And it's great that your daughters wanted to be there and are so engaged with you too. So, but I
Yeah,
think
they're not my biological daughters. They're one of my ex-girlfriend's kids, but they've lived with me. I've raised them since they were 8 years old.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Arthur, mainly because it feels like nowadays, so many of us, our families are more than just the biological. It's so
Yeah.
many friends that have become family. And when you have those difficult, situations, they're often the first that are there to respond and be there for you.
Yeah.
But, I'm gonna call on, well, I was gonna ask Adam to go next because, in addition to not only having kids when he went on dialysis, his journey also, I know he's talked about being in that sandwich generation and caring for parents as well, in-laws. So Adam, I know you're driving, so don't look at the screen. But if you want to share a little bit about your journey in fatherhood and being in the middle, being a son-in-law, what that has kind of meant, while also dealing with, kidney disease, kidney failure.
So actually, my daughters are both in the car with me right now. They're waving hello. Um, so my journey actually started much, much, much before fatherhood. Um, I had testicular cancer at 19. That led to renal failure, and at 26, about 6 months after I got married, my kidneys went into total failure. I had a transplant, and much like Arthur, when I was at work one day, I just started feeling sick to my stomach. I thought it was the flu. 3 or 4 days went on feeling like that, and then next thing I knew, I woke up in an ER and on emergency dialysis for total renal failure. And at first, kids really weren't even a thought. Life had gotten complicated. My wife and I just bought a house. We were in our 20s. And as life grew on, we decided that this is something that we definitely wanted to do. It was a little difficult, being that I am not eligible for a transplant due to some other medical conditions. So being able to manage dialysis along with parenthood, along with work, along with life, is something that you really have to, you can't prep for. It's not something that you can just sit down and make a plan, because nothing ever happens like you expect it to when it comes to both dialysis or parenthood, really.
Mm-hmm.
But so when I was 34, we decided to have kids, and that was, give me 1 second. All right, you want to hop out and stay here? Okay, thank you. All right. So, sorry about that. And fatherhood is especially on dialysis, is a challenge. There are some things that I cannot do. And I think the key part is that we never hid anything from my daughters from day one. So, they're older now, they're 12 now, so they have a much better understanding. But throughout their childhood, we kind of give them an age appropriate, from daddy's not feeling well to daddy can't do that. And, they've learned to accept what my limitations are, what our limitations are. And I think part of it is you have to be willing to accept the fact that, I have, between dialysis and a seizure disorder and some other issues going on, I need to learn to be able to say no, and I can't do this. And it's okay to not be there for every family event. And it's okay to have to sit this one out. And for a lot of people, it's a very hard pill to swallow. For me, it was as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, I partake in as much as I can. I go to as many activities as I can with them. Today I was at the pool club with them. So you try to, you find the time that you can make, and you make it worthwhile. It's about the little moments. It's not about the big events. And, going by that, I found that it works very well in our household. And it works very well for our daughters too. They're at a point now where there are things they want to do that I can't do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And, and they've grown up, part of them watching me is also turn them into, nurturing individuals, because they always want to help, whether it's helping someone on the side of the road, or it's, hey, we need to get a different chair for daddy because he can't sit in these.
Mm-hmm.
So, I found really accepting what you can and can't do, and really enjoying the moments that you can do, it makes life worth living. It really does.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's as you said, I think a lot of us try to be Superman, and it's not always easy to say no. So I think it's great that you have such a great support network as well. And because I was going to ask Chris to speak next, because I know his crash into dialysis was hard on his family. I know he shared the story, but at the same time, just like Hassan, his son is his inspiration to keep going, to get better, to get work out for a transplant. And so, Chris, I'd like you to share a little bit about your experience and what fatherhood has kind of meant for you too.
Okay. Well, the kidney world started for me when I was 25. My mother was on dialysis. She turned 50 in August, and she passed that November from dialysis, well, from kidney complications. So I had been kind of familiar with dialysis before then. And then life went on. I went back to college. I went to school. I was working, and then I met my wife, and then we got married, and we decided to have a child. And I was 43 when my son was born, and from that, he was 4 when I went on dialysis. I had been working. I hadn't been feeling well for a long time. I just didn't tell anybody, and I was getting up, going to work, and doing what I needed to do, and then I was going to see my primary care doctor, and he sent me to a nephrologist, one of his friends. And so when I went to went to visit the nephrologist, he told me, he was like, "Well, we're gonna try this renal diet first and see if that can help at least prolong you going on dialysis." And I went with that. We did that for about maybe a month. Things got worse. And I was going to see him. I was going to see the nephrologist like once a week. So this particular day, I never forget it. It was on a Wednesday. I had been to work, wasn't feeling well, went to work and got off and went to my normal visit. And he had drawn blood the week before. So I was going to get the results from that. And my doctor was like, "Well, I need to admit you to the hospital right now." And I was like, "Well, whoa, wait a minute. I got, I got to pick my son up. I got things I need to do." He was like, "Well, I'll tell you what." That was Wednesday evening. He said, "I'll give you Thursday to get things in order, but Friday at 9 o'clock, if you're not here, I'm coming to your house to get you." So after that, I went into the hospital and I stayed in the hospital for 12 days. And from that, it's just been a journey. I would, and my son is in the, he just got promoted to the 7th grade. So for the last, for the last couple of years, he was going to school, was like 45 minutes away from our house. So I would get up in the morning, take him to school, drove 45 minutes, left his school, went to dialysis, had treatment, which was another 55 minutes from his school. And then after that, I would go back, pick him up, and then whatever else he had to do because he had piano and he had different activities that a child had. So I always try my best to be there for him and be there for him as much as I can. And like on the rough days, he is my inspiration to keep me going. He um he is my I call him my broke best friend because he's the one that keeps me smiling when nobody else can make me smile. I think about him and I think about how what all it took to keep going to stay here for him. So he's my inspiration and I love him dearly.
I appreciate you sharing it, Chris. I mean, it's I know we spoke. I shared that, even for me, like someone a couple of years ago had said, we'd be willing to die for our kids, but are we willing to live for them? And I know that kind of motivated me to get my health back and to lose some extra weight and, to make sure I'm there. And I know it hasn't been easy for you too. And know you're close to getting that transplant and encourage you to keep pushing on. But I mean, at the same time, you mentioned, I think both Adam and Hassan were talking about the little joys. And so, Hassan, I know you went off camera, but I hope you're still there. I was going to say, I feel like, you know, um, someone told me it's also small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems. But I also feel it's the inverse. It's the big kids, big joy. And I've just enjoyed watching your sons, the athletic, the academic, all the accomplishments, and just hearing about your oldest son working with you on visualizing your dream, and if you want to kind of talk a little bit about that, that journey, it's not just the big kids, big problems. It's at the same time as you keep doing the best to be there as a dad, there's more to look forward to. If you
Yes,
could.
no, for sure, for sure. As I said, when they were younger, they're more dependent on you and what you need to do, what you can help them do. And as they get older, they start becoming more independent, and you get to see them grow And for me, getting a transplant and watching my kids grow, I'm third generation on dialysis from polycystic kidney disease. My oldest son, luckily, he doesn't have it, but my other three sons all have polycystic kidney disease.
Oh,
And so I'm not sure how my oldest skipped it, but sometimes it skips a generation, and he's the one that didn't get it. But my other three do have it. So we're getting them monitored so that we can kind of make sure that hopefully it progresses as slow as possible, and different medications out now, and with the nephrologist they have currently, I think that it'll help prolong it instead of, for me, I was diagnosed I had to start dialysis at 35. So for me, it was like, okay, it was earlier than expected because it was in my bloodline. I knew I was going to have to get a transplant one day, but didn't know it was going to be that early. So I think with my kids, again, they all I have three sons that are, well, college basketball players, one already finished. And so being able to watch them, and me too, I was a college basketball player, but when you see that you're playing sports and doing all that, and then you see that, okay, wow, I have a genetic kidney disorder that I have to also think about in terms of my diet, in terms of why everybody else can take protein shakes and everything else to get muscles and do all those things. We can't do that. And so having to explain that to my kids, and explain that, have the doctors explain it to them too, because in their mind, they're, big old guys. They feel like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. I can take a protein shake and do all that. But it's like, okay, you have something in your genetics makeup that you can't do that if you want to try to somehow avoid having to go on dialysis, or maybe actually helping one day avoid having to have a transplant. And so, but watching the kids grow, watching them become young men, watching them develop into their own lives, that's been huge for me, because again, my excuse me, I'm fourth generation on with kidney dialysis. My great grandfather had it, my grandmother, my mother, and then me, and then now I have my sons are the fifth generation. And so yeah, so again, hopefully they do come up with something to cure polycystic kidney disease. It's something that you have to think about when you start a family. You have to say, okay, is this something that I want to continue to pass down in generationally, or do I want to not have kids and not have to worry about that, so I don't pass this on any forward? And so again, those are things that my kids will have to think about. Those are things that people that have polycystic kidney disease have to think about, because there is that possibility that your kids can have it. And so do you want to continue that cycle? And so for me, I couldn't imagine not having my kids. I
Mhm.
think my kids have seen me go through dialysis, and seen me after transplant, and see me living a full life, see me still playing sports, see me just doing that. So I think that gives them hope to say, okay, even though I have this, I can still live a full life, still have a family, still have this. But it is, again, I have to worry about whether my kids have, the genetic gene as well. So, yeah, but for me, I wouldn't, um, even though I was on dialysis, I was on, had a transplant. When you think about it, you always think, okay, man, my life is bad, but there's somebody out there that would trade places with you because they're in a worse situation. So you have to really feel blessed that even though you're in that situation, there's somebody in a worse situation that, unfortunately, they would love to be able to say, oh, I could have a transplant and live. One of my best friends had ALS. And so he was a, college basketball player all himself. And then, he lived 3 years after being diagnosed, and he would have traded places with me in a heartbeat to be able to be on dialysis and have a transplant and still continue living, because his two young sons no longer have a father now. So,
Mhm.
it's all perspective, how you look at it. But again, the goal is to live life to the fullest. And every day I wake up, I'm just, so thankful. And so,
I appreciate you sharing that, Hassan. I mean, I've heard so many patients say after going on dialysis, your perspective changes, I mean, if you focus on the past, you live with regret. If you focus on the future, then you have anxiety. But when you're in the present, even just, looking in the garden has a different meaning for you. And so I was going to ask, Chris, you're talking about some of the hard days, and your broke best friend makes you laugh. And I mean, if you wouldn't mind, like, sharing a little bit about, like, so how do you, stay positive when it is difficult on some of those bad days? And I mean, I know Hassan mentioned he focus on others would be happy to trade with you, but it's not always easy, because you're still asking yourself, why am I going through this?
Yeah, the hard days. I have a clinic mate now. She's I think like 24, and she has gotten sick, and she's just going through it. And you think you be thankful, even though I'm sitting here in this chair, but I'm still able to do for myself. I dry myself.
Mhm.
Take care of myself. I, cook, clean, bathe. I do everything for myself. So that's just the small things to be thankful for. Because when you sit in that chair, you see a lot of patients come in on stretchers and walkers and, wheelchairs and stuff like that. And I'm able to get around without the aid of any of that. So you just be thankful. There's so many people that's on dialysis that they just give up. So they do it because they have to. And it's not because they want to. I mean, I guess nobody really wants to, but you do what you need to do to stay alive. So
Mhm.
I just I'll be thankful for the small times, the small things when I don't feel like it. When I do feel like it, I just try my best to keep pushing. As long as I can, I will.
No, I appreciate you sharing that because I think we actually had a senator who could participate in our 10th anniversary celebration, and his wife sent a thank you note to, DPC because she said that they looked at dialysis as the long goodbye, as a way to die. But when they met so many of our board members and advocates who were really living life, they saw it as a way to live. And so, you have a positive attitude that others have worse, and that you want to be there for for your son and for your family. I think that's awesome. And I actually was going to ask Adam next, as he was talking about those little moments. That's what matters. And I'm so grateful that he's at the swim club or just picked up his daughters and took them somewhere else because, it's true. Everyone's focused on the material stuff nowadays, but it still feels like the best things in life are free, and it's like there's nothing I'd rather do than like go fishing with my kid, or watch him play hockey. And Adam, I know it's probably taking your daughters to the car show, even if they don't enjoy the car show. But if you wouldn't mind, like, sharing some of those little things that, what are the things that you hope that they remember long, long, long after we're all gone, those memories
You
from their
know,
childhood.
it's just everything right now. I know you know my history. A lot of people don't, but I've been dealing with this stuff for literally about half my life right now. And real quick to Hassan's point, we did not want to risk our children having kidney issues, so we actually did IVF instead, which
Hmm.
was a blessing for us to be able to do that. And the kids know, obviously, we're not going to hide that from them. So but really, it is as you said, it really is the now. Not what's happening tomorrow, not what happened yesterday, what we're doing today.
Mhm.
And as you said, little events like just taking them to the swim club. I want them to remember me as somebody who, while I had my challenges and I had my things I couldn't do, I did everything in my power to be with them as much as possible and to raise them right and to make sure they turn into good people. And so far, I think I'm doing an okay job at that. It's tough, especially for them when they watch their friends and their friends' parents, and they go on all these trips and they go to all these events, and their dad's at everything they can possibly be at, and I'm stuck in a chair for 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, and my energy levels are low, and I need a mobility scooter for long trips. So, I really try to focus on the we're together time and not the we're apart time. And you really just live in the moment, get the best that you can out of every moment you spend with them. Because, it's not guaranteed. It's not, we've all come to terms with the fact I'm probably not going to live past 60. Um, Hold on 1 second. My wife is coming. Yes. Bye. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to go on mute for 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Sorry.
No worries. Well, if it's okay, I'm going to ask a follow-up quick question to Arthur then, because I think Arthur, one of the things that I've heard people say is, dialysis is often like the new normal. and that, you're a lot more than just your disease. And you mentioned obviously, being a busy professional before, being a parent. I try to think of myself as a dad, a husband, a community activist, attorney, you name it. So Arthur, can you talk about, like, yeah, it's just one piece of your life, but especially as a dad, you've had so much more that you've had to deal with in your life.
Yeah, I before dialysis, I was jetting around the country making money and having a good time. I mean, I was flying somewhere almost every week. And then after that happened, I had to quit doing that because of the logistics of it, trying to schedule. And I didn't like having to do a major medical procedure in a different dialysis center every week. I just didn't care to do that. So I uh, spent more time at home and with my girls. I think probably one of the things that I like about spending more time with them was they were about 8 or 9, 10 years old. Was me taking them to the river and showing them how to skip rocks across the river, and they were just amazed how to do that. And they had tried to do it, tried to do it, and couldn't do it. I think they finally mastered it, and now they've taught their kids how to skip rocks. It doesn't sound like anything, but it's really cool, 'cause I know I taught them and they taught their kids. And my probably another big moment with my kids was the first Christmas. I didn't get them till they were like 8 years old, and the first Christmas, I was still working at the time. I had a whole living room full of presents for them, and it was just them. And it was so exciting to see the happiness on their face that they got all these presents and stuff. So I've got to spend a lot more time with them. Not nowadays because they live out of state. Don't get to see my grandkids, and I've got my first great granddaughter, and I haven't got to see her yet. But that's the part that being on dialysis and having the extra time, uh, I like that for one thing. And as far as feeling down and stuff, I've always been a big fan of resilience. Resilience is it started with me with a child when they brought me home from the hospital. Uh, my introduction was to the world was they brought me home, put me in the crib, and said, "There you go, welcome to the world." And so everything I had to do the rest of my life was had to figure it out myself. Not that my parents were bad or anything, but they always worked. My dad always had couple businesses going, and my mom worked at RCA in Bloomington and worked at a restaurant. So that way they could provide us with the kind of home, the things we needed. But the downside of that was didn't really get to see them that often. But it made me become very resilient, having to figure out things on my own.
I
And
appreciate
that's
you,
got me
Arthur.
through that. Huh?
Yeah. And I appreciate your sharing that, Arthur. And, I think just like Adam said, the little things, and Adam, no need to apologize. I think, frankly, the format, it shows, all of our advocates that, we're real people who prioritize family, who juggle multiple competing things. And I think, it's awesome. And so glad that, when it comes to as far as priority, you have your kids, you have your wife. I know if my wife needed something, Adam, I would be on mute too. So since you did go on mute, I'm gonna let you, we're a little over time, but I want you to, to close out with any parting thoughts on, on this amazing journey that you've been on. And, and I think I really appreciate your sharing some of um, the things as a parent, if you decide to have kids that you consider, and the fact that you have been open and honest. Like I give you credit because that it's not easy, and you wonder if your kids can handle it. And I think kids are really resilient, and we don't give them as much credit for that as well. And you're going to be building really empowered, capable kids, and that's awesome, Adam. So I'm going to let you kind of finish up since I kind of cut you off on on the last one at the end. So
Where am I going with this now?
is there any closing thoughts, as a father, like you mentioned living in the present and not
Yeah.
worried about the whole coulda, shoulda, woulda, but at the same time, making the most of that. And I think
So I used
just
to. There was a time when I did worry about the shoulda, coulda, woulda, and I will tell you that put me in an inpatient psych hospital for a month and a half. And that was when I learned very hard
Mhm.
that you can't live in the shoulda, coulda, woulda. You can't live in the past. You can't live in the what if. You got to just take it day by day. My friends, my coworkers, my family, they know very well that if they need me today, I'm around. I'll be there, but I can't promise I'll be there tomorrow. And I just why stress yourself out about things that you can't control? You
Mhm.
know, I'm fortunate we're at a place where financially we are far from rich, but we're comfortable. You
Mhm.
know, I don't need to. My wife has a good job. My kids are doing well in school. They're healthy, thank God. You know, honestly, what else do you need in life? And I just wake up every day and I'm just so proud to be in a situation where I have these two beautiful daughters. Because for a while I thought that that wasn't even going to be possible. And, my dialysis mate, we originally were looking to adopt, and
Mhm.
adopting while on dialysis is extremely, extremely hard to do. Even with all the notes from all the doctors and all the therapists and everyone else, it's this stigma that they say, how can you raise a kid while you're dealing with this on yourself?
Mhm.
And I joke with my wife. I want to send the agency annual pictures of our two girls and say, "This is how you do it." And I just it really. I'm not a religious person, but if I were, I'd say I'm blessed.
Mhm.
Despite all the hardships, despite all the difficulties, the hospital nights, the month long hospital stays, I I'm happy to be where I'm at right now, and I honestly wouldn't trade that for anything else in the world. And to be able to say that while on dialysis and while having mobility issues and health issues and all these other things going on, I think it's pretty incredible that two little life forms can change your entire perspective on life. And you realize that it's not about you anymore, it's about us. And that is when you come to that realization, it's just a mind blowing event. It really is.
No, Adam, appreciate you sharing that. And I think if it's okay, I was going to let folks know. I mean, Adam, it's been kind of lifelong. He was just recognized for 25 years of service as an EMT,
Mm-hmm.
so always kind of giving back in his community. And, at the same time, grateful to have advocates like Hassan and Arthur and Chris also on our board who want to help other patients and improve their quality of life too. So want to thank each of you for sharing so much of your own personal lives and journeys. And I'm sure folks are going to walk away inspired and motivated. And, I think your perspective, Adam, about being blessed, the son said the same thing too, is I think truly inspiring. And I think, like I said, people keep telling me after going on dialysis, it's just a different perspective. You just appreciate things that you didn't as much before. And so with that, I want to thank everyone for being on our call. Thank our board members who participated and shared their experiences for sharing so much. And hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Have a good one, everybody.